let me describe two drones. The first one has a 1.3-inch sensor D-Log-M, omnidirectional obstacle avoidance, intelligent follow, HDR, and a long-range battery option. That's the Mini 4 Pro. Second one has LiDAR, low-light obstacle avoidance, even longer battery life, portrait optimization, and built-in internal storage. That is the Lighto X1. You could describe the Lighto X1 as a slightly older Mini 4 Pro that grew up in a different direction. Not quite as young and flashy, but quietly more capable in ways that matter for how people actually fly. This is the full review. Let's go through everything. Picked up the RC2 standard battery combo. Inside the box, the drone, the RC2 controller, and a charging hub. The hub supports up to 65 watt charging. Once you're above 45 watt, it can charge all three batteries simultaneously. There's also a microSD card slot on the hub for storing spare cards. I haven't inserted a card into the Lighto X1. The 42GB internal storage at 250 megabyte seconds read speed handles everything I shoot. Once you've flown with internal storage, you really don't go back. The Lighto X1's flight performance is genuinely higher than the Mini 5 Pro, and that's not something you'd expect given the positioning. Normal mode, 12 meters per second horizontal, 5 meters per second ascent and descent. That matches the Mini 5 Pro exactly. Maximum speed mode, 18 meters per second horizontal, 7 meters per second vertical, both slightly above the Mini 5 Pro's ceiling. It's not a Pro, but it flies like one. Range, under FCC standards 15 km maximum, under SSRC in China up to 8 km. My real-world maximum range test in light wind, full battery, 7,000 meters out. Total round trip of 14 kilometers on a standard battery. Signal stayed red the entire way out, but the video feed never meaningfully degraded. That's O4 doing its job. I landed at 6% battery. That's cutting it close for a standard battery. Worth knowing before you plan long-range flights with the standard pack. Battery life in real-world use. The rated maximum is 36 minutes. At 85% battery consumed, which is how I calculate usable flight time, I'm getting around 26 minutes. Gap between standard and long-range battery is still noticeable, but 26 minutes covers the vast majority of shooting scenarios I actually find myself in. The Lighto X1 carries a 1.3-inch sensor with a 24mm equivalent focal length. Let me be precise about what the numbers mean, because some of the terminology around the HDR modes needs a careful explanation. In daylight, the Lighto X1 can capture video with a wide dynamic range, but this is 10-bit rec. 709 color space, not the HLG HDR format. It's not the same thing. What it means practically, the footage comes out of the camera with more latitude for color adjustment than typical 8-bit footage. You can push highlights and shadows further in post without the image falling apart. Or you can use it as a clean, near-ready output straight from the drone without any grading. For those who prefer to grade from scratch, D-Log-M is here. Full 10-bit, flat color profile, full grading flexibility. I flew the same route at night with the Lighto X1 and the Mini 5 Pro for a direct comparison. The difference is almost imperceptible. You can treat the Lighto X1 as matching or not meaningfully falling behind the Mini 5 Pro in image quality. That's a significant statement for a drone positioned below it. Beyond standard 4K at 60 FPS, the Lighto X1 shoots 4K at 100 FPS for slow motion. The footage is smooth and usable. My only request to DJI, add a frame rate alignment option in DJI Fly so slow motion clips can be compiled at 24 FPS or 30 FPS multiples rather than always needing a 1.2x retime in post. Same request applies to Hyperlapse, small fix, meaningful quality of life improvement. Portrait optimization, a feature that debuted on the Mini 5 Pro, is here too. It adds a subtle facial brightening effect when a person is in frame. Don't shoot people often, so I don't use it frequently. But the 48 megapixel stills with the auto exposure algorithm and HDR processing are genuinely impressive, especially in high contrast scenes. The Lighto X1's omnidirectional obstacle avoidance system uses 2 fisheye cameras and a LiDAR unit, a configuration that's similar to the Neo 2's setup. Compared to entry-level drones with no obstacle avoidance at all, the Mini 4K, the Atom RS, having full omnidirectional awareness fundamentally changes the experience. You fly with more confidence, that's real. But let me be honest about the limits. Vision-based obstacle avoidance needs movement to calculate distance and position. The fisheye cameras don't have the resolution or frame rate to reliably detect thin obstacles like wires or branches. In my experience, the auxiliary video feed, which shows you what the sensors can see in 5 directions, front, rear, left, right, and below, is actually more important for avoiding crashes than the automatic avoidance itself. Seeing what's ahead is more useful than hoping the drone reacts in time. The auxiliary feed on the Lighto X1 uses single fisheye lenses arranged symmetrically, so like a 360 camera, the stitch line is unavoidable. The drone's body and antennas also block certain angles depending on orientation. These are real limitations. Not deal breakers, but worth understanding so you fly accordingly rather than being surprised. One genuine advantage of the LiDAR, the low light activation threshold is only 5 lux. That's the same sensor specification used on the Mini 5 Pro and Air 3S. The Mini 4 Pro with its dual vision system requires more light to function reliably. At night, the Lighto X1's obstacle avoidance stays active longer. Flying in low light is a little more forgiving than it would be on older hardware. Advanced return to home is here, the same 5th generation GNSS assisted system that's in the Mini 5 Pro. In good lighting with sufficient satellite coverage, the drone memorizes the flight path and finds an optimal landing point on the way back rather than flying directly to the launch point. One caveat: over reflective or water surfaces, the downward sensors can fail, and the drone defaults to a traditional 3-stage return. Once it switches modes, it stays in the traditional mode for the rest of that flight. Worth knowing if you're planning water proximity shots. Chapter: Follow modes maximum follow speed, 12 meters per second, 43 kilometers per hour. That's enough to track a bicycle or a mid-speed vehicle. The dual-layer compass on the Lighto X1 makes a difference here. Whether the subject is stationary or moving, the drone can adjust its follow behavior and camera movement dynamically. In open environments, the results are smooth, the kind of compound moves that are genuinely difficult to replicate manually. In complex environments, the combination of omnidirectional avoidance and front-facing LiDAR keeps things relatively safe. The honest caveat: the Lighto X1 uses monocular vision for its obstacle avoidance system. From a pure engineering standpoint, it cannot match the accuracy of stereo vision systems like the Mini 5 Pro or Air 3S. In dense obstacle environments, the higher-end drones are more reliable. That gap is real. But here's the other side of that. Having omnidirectional follow at this price, weaving through a forest, holding a subject at speed, used to require steps to netting up to at least a Mini 4 Pro. The Lighto X1 brings that experience down significantly in price. For most shooting scenarios most people actually encounter, it's more than enough. Available across the whole Lighto lineup is the smart feature I use most. Since the Mavic 4 Pro, the transition from image-based tracking to position locking has been reliable and smooth. No unexplained shaking, no sudden drops. On the Lighto X1, it's the same quality. For someone who relies on smart features heavily, the stability of focus is almost as important as what it can do. It passes that test. Master Shots is noticeably better on the Lighto series than it was on the Mavic 3 Pro or Mavic 4 Pro. More templates, and crucially, the output clips are saved individually rather than as one merged file. That matters for mobile editing apps. It matters even more for anyone who doesn't want to sit at a desktop editor after a shoot. I used to be skeptical of Master Shots. I thought of it as a longer, automated quick shot that didn't belong in the main menu. I've updated that view. The movements it produces are already better than what I'd fly manually in the same time. When I don't know what to shoot, it's a genuinely good option. Waypoint mission planning is here. I don't use it frequently, but the use case it suits best is footage comparisons. Same path, different times of day, or different seasons. The drone repeats the exact route with precision, useful when you need it. One feature request: I'd love to see DJI implement Inspire 3 style 3D trajectory support in Waypoint planning. That's probably wishful thinking at this price tier, but the foundation is there. Chapter: Hyperlapse. The Lighto X1 can compile 1080p hyperlapse in camera. If you save the original RAW frames and compile yourself, you can output at 432 by 324, a resolution higher than 4K. That's a meaningful quality ceiling for a drone in this category. Because hyperlapse is photo-based rather than video-based, the image quality gap between the Lighto X1 and more expensive drones is smaller than it would be for standard video. You're not fighting sensor size in the same way. The extended battery makes hyperlapse better in a practical sense too. Sunrise to full daylight, sunset to city lights on. These are sequences that require time in the air and margin for error. The extra flight time gives you both. My preferred hyperlapse mode is directional hyperlapse combined with focus. It creates a push-in or pull-out movement while holding a locked subject, and the results are consistently good. 3 years later, the Lighto X1 is a genuine step forward. Omnidirectional obstacle avoidance, LiDAR, portrait optimization, dual-layer compass, focus mode, higher frame rates, better master shots. These are all real practical improvements that change how the drone actually feels to fly and shoot with. On image quality relative to price, the Lighto X1 gets you near Mini 5 Pro output at a significantly lower cost. That's a strong value case. The honest note at the end: the Lighto X1 doesn't have anything genuinely surprising. No rotating gimbal, no multi-lens system, no palm launch, no unusual design choice that makes you stop and think. Every decision is logical, everything is well executed, but nothing is unexpected. Whether that bothers you depends on what you're buying it for. As a tool that does what it promises at the price it charges, the Lighto X1 earns its place. The question I'll leave you with: at the current price, does the value make sense for you? Drop it in the comments. I'm curious where people land. See you in the next one.